The checking account says $11.43. Not 1,100. Not 11,000. $11. 43 cents. And it's the 19th of the month, which means rent is 11 days away. Rent that costs $1,175. And you have $11. You're sitting at the kitchen table at 11:52 at night. The kind of quiet that only happens when everyone else in the apartment building is asleep and the whole world feels like it's moving forward without you. The phone screen is the only light in the room. You've opened the banking app 4 times in the last hour, like maybe the number changed. It didn't. This is $0. We're close enough that the difference doesn't matter. And if you've ever sat at a table like that, doing that exact math, knowing that something has to give but not knowing what, take a second right now to subscribe to Money Elevate. Because this channel is built for people who know what that table feels like. And this story? It starts right there. You're 23, maybe 24. You moved to this city 18 months ago with a used Honda Civic and a degree that cost you $38,000 in loans that you haven't even started thinking about yet, because thinking about them makes your chest tighten in a way you don't have words for. You got a job, $34,000 a year, which sounds like real money until you divide it by 12 and subtract taxes and realize your take-home is $2,190 a month and rent alone is more than half of that. The math never works. That's the first thing nobody tells you. At this level, the math is designed to not work. Groceries went up. Gas went up. Everything went up except your paycheck. You started keeping a list on your phone. A running total. Rent. Electric. Phone. Car insurance. Internet. Subscriptions you forgot you had. Groceries. Gas. And then at the bottom, a number. The number left over after all of that. Sometimes it's $200. Sometimes it's $80. Once it was negative $40, and you had to call your mom, which was the hardest phone call you've made since you left home. That's the reality of net worth zero. You're not bad with money. You're just underwater before the month even starts. But here's what's quietly happening that you can't see yet. You're learning, not in a classroom. In the only classroom that actually changes behavior, the one where the consequences are real. You're learning what things actually cost. You're learning which expenses are fixed and which ones move. You're learning that a $6 daily coffee is $180 a month, which is significant when you have $80 left. You're learning the difference between what you want right now and what you need to survive. And none of that feels like learning. It feels like suffering, but the distinction will matter later. Year 2, you got a raise. 4%, which brings you to $35,360. Which after taxes is about $2,260 take home. $70 extra a month. Enough to stop one of the smaller anxiety spirals, not enough to actually breathe. But something shifted. You started packing lunch 3 days a week. Not because someone told you to, because you did the math on your own one slow Tuesday afternoon and realized you were spending $280 a month on food during work hours. You cut it to $90. You didn't even feel it after the first 2 weeks. That's $190 a month you didn't have before. You're not investing it. You're not saving it in any structured way. But you stopped spending it, which is a different version of the same thing. The negative bleeding slowed. And then, a moment. Small. Almost missable. Your company has a 401k. They've been offering it since you started. You never set it up because the paperwork felt confusing and you figured you'd do it later. Later kept not coming. But one afternoon, a coworker mentioned the company match. 3%. $1 for $1. Which means if you put in 3% of your salary, they put in another 3. You didn't understand exactly what that meant. But you understood the word free. You filled out the form that afternoon. $87 a month comes out of your check automatically. You barely notice it after the first 2 weeks. But the company adds another $87. And that $174 a month goes somewhere you can't easily touch, which turns out to be the entire point. At this moment, your net worth is somewhere around negative $32,000. Student loans. A small credit card balance from a month the car needed brakes. And that's it. No assets. No savings. Nothing. But something is growing. Quietly. Without your permission. Year 4. You got a better job. Not dramatically better, but noticeably better. $48,000 a year. Take home around $3,100 a month. You move to a slightly better apartment, $1,350 because the old one had a mold problem you were too broke to fight about. Here's what's interesting about this moment. You get a $1,000 a month raise, effectively. And the thing that happens to most people when that happens is something called lifestyle inflation. The raise arrives, and the expenses expand to meet it. Nicer apartment, newer car, we're going out. And 6 months later, the bank account looks exactly the same as before. You almost did this. You looked at a 2-bedroom that was $1,800. You thought about a lease on a car. You imagined the version of your life where you were the person with the nicer things. But you didn't. Not completely. You let some of it expand. The apartment, yes, some of it was necessity, but you kept the lunch habit. You kept the 401k contribution. And you added something new. A savings account. Automatic transfer. $200 a month, the day after payday. So you never see it. Never spend it. It just moves. By the end of year 4, that account has $1,800 in it, which feels like nothing until you need it. And you do need it. The car needs a timing belt, $840, and you pay for it in cash from that account, and then you replenish it over the next 4 months. No credit card, no calling anyone. Number 11 p.m. math session in the dark. That's the first time you feel it. A tiny, flickering version of financial stability. Your net worth is still negative, still around minus $27,000. The student loans are moving down slowly. The credit card is paid off, but the direction of travel has changed. Have you ever had a moment like this, where something small finally started to go right? Let me know in the comments, because this is where the story actually begins to shift, and it looks different for everyone. Year 6, you are 29 or 30. You have a clearer picture now of what your career actually looks like. Maybe you've been promoted once. Maybe you changed companies. The salary is somewhere between $55,000 and $65,000, which puts take-home around $3,500 to $4,000. And you've started to do something quietly revolutionary. You've started reading. Not books about success or motivation. You've tried those and they feel abstract. You've started reading about money itself, about how it moves, about why some people have it and some don't. And you find something that doesn't feel like a secret, but is treated like one. The thing most people don't understand about investing is that the return on your money isn't a reward for being rich. It's a reward for time. Time is the actual asset. A dollar invested at 30 is worth dramatically more at 65 than a dollar invested at 45. Not because the person at 30 is smarter, because of math that compounds on itself every single year. Your 401k now has about $14,000 in it. You've been contributing for 4 years. The balance isn't because you're a financial genius. It's because $174 a month went somewhere and sat there and grew slightly and then grew a little more on the growth and then a little more on that. You increase the contribution, not dramatically. You go from 3% to 6%. The company still matches 3. So now $300 a month is going into retirement. You take home about $80 less per paycheck than before. You never miss it. The emergency fund is at $4,200. The student loans are at $21,000. The net worth is still negative, but the gap is closing. For the first time in your adult life, you're moving in the right direction in a way that feels structural rather than accidental. Year 8. Something happened you didn't plan for. You got laid off. The company restructured. 30 people gone in a Tuesday morning meeting. You walked out of the building with a cardboard box and a severance check for 6 weeks of pay. And here's the thing about that moment, the thing that separates this version of you from the you of year 1. You were scared. Of course you were scared, but you weren't desperate. The emergency fund had grown to $7,800. You had 6 weeks of severance. Your fixed expenses, because you'd managed them carefully, were $2,200 a month, which meant you had roughly 4 months before you were in real trouble. 4 months is enough time to find a job. Usually, you found one in 11 weeks, and you negotiated. For the first time in your career, you didn't take the first number. You asked for $73,000. They came back at $69,000. You said $72,000, and they said yes. That $3,000 difference compounds too. Every year you work there. Every raise calculated on a higher base. The layoff felt like a catastrophe in that Tuesday morning meeting. It turned out to be a turning point. Net worth at end of year 8, somewhere around 0. The student loans are down to $8,000. The retirement account is approaching $28,000. The emergency fund is back to $5,000 after taking a hit during the job gap. The net worth is just barely positive for the first time in your adult life. That number, 0, has never felt so good. Year 10, you're 33, maybe 34. Nobody tells you this part. The first years of mortgage payment are mostly interest. Like mostly, your first payment on that $245,000 loan, about $1,100 of it is interest. Only $390 is actually reducing your debt. This feels wrong. It feels almost predatory, but it shifts slowly over time, and by year 10 of the mortgage, more than half of each payment is principal. The house itself has value. In this market, similar homes are already up 9% from what you paid. Which you didn't buy it for, you bought it to live in, but it's there, on paper. Net worth at year 12. The retirement account is at $72,000. The brokerage is at $14,000. The house equity, based on current value, is about $26,000. Total assets around $112,000. Remaining student loans, 0. Remaining consumer debt, 0. Mortgage balance, $241,000. Car loan, $7,200. Net worth, approximately negative $136,000. Wait, that's backward. You have assets of $112,000 and debts of $248,200. That's negative $136,000. But here's what that number hides. The debts are structured. The mortgage is not like credit card debt. It's attached to an asset that historically appreciates. The car loan is temporary. The retirement account is growing faster than the mortgage is growing. The direction is still right. The trajectory is what matters more than the snapshot. Year 15. You are 38, maybe 39. Something has happened to your career that surprised you. You became good at something specific. Not famous good. Not exceptional in the public eye good. But competent and known in your field good. And that has value that shows up in salary. You're making $94,000 now. Take home around $5,700 a month. The lifestyle didn't inflate dramatically. Some, but not dramatically. The house cost is still $1,490. You've added a second car payment that will end in 8 months. The kids, yes, at some point the story added children, because life rarely asks permission before adding complexity. The kids have activities and daycare, which is its own budget category that deserves its own conversation. But the retirement account crossed $100,000. There's a moment when that happens. Not fireworks, not celebration. More like a quiet recognition that the thing you were told would happen if you did the thing, it happened. The math is real. The compound growth is real. It's not theoretical anymore. The account has been growing partly from your contributions and partly from market returns. You've put in maybe $60,000 over 15 years. The account has $100,000. The extra $40,000 is from growth on growth on growth. That's the compounding that sounds like a cliche until you actually see in your account. The brokerage is at $38,000. The house is now worth about $340,000 based on nearby sales. The mortgage is down to $218,000. House equity, $122,000. Net worth, retirement $100,000, brokerage $38,000, house equity $122,000. Total, $260,000. Minus car loan balance of $3,200, almost done. Effective net worth, approximately $257,000. $250,000. You didn't say it out loud, but you thought it. Year 18. The car loan is gone. The kids are older and daycare is over, which frees up $1,400 a month that once disappeared into that specific category of parental expense. You use part of it to increase retirement contributions to the maximum allowed, $23,500 a year. The rest flows into the brokerage. The house needs a new roof. $14,000. You pull it from savings, which you have, because the emergency fund is real and the savings habit never really stopped. It stings, but you write the check and move on. This is what financial stability actually feels like. It doesn't feel like luxury. It feels like problems costing money instead of costing sleep. You make a choice around this time that not everyone makes. You sit down at the kitchen table with a legal pad the way you never could have imagined doing 10 years ago, and you write out where you are. Every account, every debt, every monthly number, and you look at the trajectory. The retirement account is at $184,000. The brokerage is at $67,000. The house equity is at $155,000 based on a conservative estimate. The mortgage has 12 years left if you pay normally, 8 if you add $400 extra per month to principal. You decide to add $300 per month to principal, not $400, a compromise between debt freedom and continued investing. Net worth approaching $400,000. Salary at $107,000 after a careful job change that felt risky in the moment. Total monthly investment contributions between retirement and brokerage, about $3,100 per month. The number used to be $174. Now it's $3,100. Same habit, dramatically different scale. Year 20. You're 43, maybe 44. The retirement account crossed $300,000. You remember the kitchen table at 11:43 p.m. You don't think about it often, but sometimes it visits the way significant things do. Your life doesn't look like a financial magazine. The house is nice, but not extravagant. The car is reliable, but not impressive. The vacations are real, but not aspirational. You still pack lunch, sometimes out of habit. The $6 coffee is an occasional treat, not a daily ritual you feel guilty about. What has changed is harder to photograph. You don't check the account in the middle of the night anymore. Not because things are perfect. Things are never perfect, but because the margin has grown wide enough that a problem is just a problem, not an emergency. The stress that used to sit in your chest like a stone has moved somewhere further away that it's still there, occasionally, but it doesn't live there. Your kids are watching. They're old enough now to notice things. The way you talk about money without panic. The way decisions get made at a table where all the options are real options, not just different versions of crisis management. Net worth at year 20. Retirement, $304,000. Brokerage, $127,000. House equity, $195,000 on a home now worth $415,000. Car, owned outright. Emergency fund, $34,000. About 6 months of actual expenses at this life stage. Total net worth, approximately $660,000. Approaching 7 figures. Not there yet, but the math is doing work that you used to have to do yourself. Year 24. You're 47. The mortgage is paid off. 3 years early. The morning you made the final payment, you did not cry at the kitchen table. You felt something quieter than that. A kind of recalibration. Like a background noise you'd stopped hearing had finally stopped. $1,490 a month freed. You put $800 of it into the brokerage. $300 into a college fund that is honestly already ahead of where you need it to be. $200 into a home improvement fund because the house is aging. $190 you allow to just exist in checking as breathing room. The retirement account is approaching $500,000. At some point between year 20 and now, you stopped feeling anxious about the number and started feeling curious about it. There's a difference. Anxiety is reactive. Curiosity is engaged. You started actually reading the quarterly statements instead of filing them away. You started understanding the funds you're in. You made a few small adjustments, nothing dramatic, nothing reactive, just considered. The brokerage is at $210,000. House equity, you own it. Value around $445,000. Total assets, approximately $1.17 million. You are a millionaire. On paper, in a spreadsheet, not in your daily experience, not in any dramatic way, but by the actual definition of the word. You think about telling someone. You don't. Not because you're ashamed, because it doesn't feel like the thing you thought it would feel like. It feels like numbers that you'll keep tending. Like a garden, not a trophy. Year 28. The retirement account is at $820,000. The brokerage is at $340,000. The house is paid off, worth about $490,000 in this neighborhood. Your salary is $138,000. You've been at this company for 9 years. You've been promoted twice. You lead a team now. The work has gotten more interesting and more stressful in roughly equal measure. Here's something nobody prepares you for at this stage. The money becomes abstract before you expected it to. You've done the projections. At current growth rates and contribution rates, the retirement account will hit $1.4 million by the time you turn 65. Social Security adds something, though you've learned not to plan on a number. The brokerage can be drawn on before retirement without penalty. The house is a paid asset you could downsize from if needed. The number that matters now isn't how much you have. It's when you could stop working if you needed to. And the answer, quietly, without announcement, has become soon. Not immediately, but soon. The question has changed from how do I survive to how do I use my time? That shift from survival to option. That is the actual definition of financial freedom. Not a number. A shift in what question you're asking. Net worth approaching $1.7 million. 2 paid cars. No consumer debt of any kind. 3 months from now, your youngest starts college, and the 529 account covers it without you restructuring anything else. Year 32. You're 55. Net worth has crossed $2.5 million. You know this not because you check constantly, but because you did a proper accounting last January and the number hasn't alarmed you since. It's stable. It's growing. The market did something unsettling 2 years ago. Everything dropped 22% in 7 months, and you felt it viscerally in the account balance, but you didn't move anything. You'd promised yourself years before that you wouldn't. The account recovered in 14 months. You kept contributing through all of it. The thing about market downturns at this stage is that you're still buying. Every contribution buys more shares at the lower price. The downturn felt like a crisis and functioned like a sale. Your career has started to feel different. You love parts of it. You're tired of other parts. You started thinking about what the next version looks like. Consulting, maybe, or something smaller. Something that uses what you know, but doesn't require the pace you've kept. This is the conversation that $2.5 million allows you to have. The conversation where should I stay is a real question and not a luxury. You don't retire yet, but you negotiate a 4-day week. The company says yes because you're hard to replace, and they know it. Take-home drops by roughly $2,000 a month. The investment accounts absorb this without changing trajectory. You sleep later on Fridays. It's a small thing. It is everything. Year 36. The retirement account is at $1.8 million. The brokerage, which you've been drawing from occasionally for large expenses, is at $490,000. The house is worth $530,000. There are 2 paid cars, a healthy emergency fund, no debt of any kind. Total net worth, approximately $2.9 million. You're 59. Your oldest called last week. They have their own kitchen table now, their own late-night math, their own version of $11.43 at the end of the month. They asked you how you did it, how you got from there to here, and you thought about it for a long moment. Because the real answer isn't what most people expect. It isn't a stock tip. It isn't a lucky break. It isn't a moment of genius. It's that you started. Even when the math didn't work, you found a piece of the math that could move. Even when the raise was 4%, you kept the extra instead of letting it disappear. Even when the layoff felt like the floor falling out, the floor held because you'd been quietly building it. You told them, automate something, even $50 a month. Not because $50 a month is going to change everything. Because the habit of watching something grow instead of spending everything is the thing that changes everything. They listened. You don't know if they believed you. You believed you once at 23, sitting at a table with $11.43 in a checking account, which is about the least believable moment imaginable. Year 40. You're 63. You're not working full-time. You consult a few projects a year, things that interest you, people you like. The income is modest, maybe $45,000 a year. But it's not the income that's supporting you. It's the accounts. The retirement account is at $2.1 million. The brokerage is at $630,000. The house equity is $530,000. A small pension from the company you worked at for 9 years adds $870 a month. Social Security, which you haven't claimed yet because waiting increases the benefit, will add more when you do. Total net worth, approximately $3.3 million. You walk into mornings now, the same time you used to commute. The neighborhoods are quiet at that hour. The light is particular. You bring coffee from home, which is a habit you never fully abandoned, not even when the money stopped matching. You think about the checking account sometimes. $11.43. The number has become almost mythological in the personal story you carry. The place you started. The reminder that the distance between that table and this morning walk was not talent or luck, but accumulated small decisions made consistently for a very long time. And somewhere in America right now, someone is at that table, doing that math, feeling what you felt. The water heater clicking on, the phone screen, the only light. The banking app opened 4 times in the last hour. And what they cannot see, what is invisible from inside that moment, is that the direction can change. Not overnight, not dramatically, but structurally, quietly, one small moved thing at a time. The retirement account isn't freedom because it's big. It's freedom because it represents 40 years of choosing the slightly harder thing. Packing the lunch, keeping the contribution, staying the course through the 22% drop, not spending every raise. That's the story. Not a secret, not a shortcut. Just time and decisions and the willingness to be consistent long after it's boring. If this story is one you needed to hear today, share it with someone who's at the kitchen table right now. They might need to see that the math can change, not just this month, but over the whole arc of a life. This is Money Elevate. We'll see you in the next one.